On the surface, Ocarina of Time's Kakariko Village appears to be a quaint, peaceful settlement. Guarded gates shelter the village from the dangers of the open Hyrule Fields to the west and the fires of Death Mountain to the north, ensuring Kakariko remains a calm pocket of quiet civilization and serene beauty. Indeed, the village's chief, Impa, opened up Kakariko Village, once home to the Sheikah tribe, as a refuge for those fleeing the civil war that took place before Ocarina of Time, an event which is echoed after the game's time skip, where even more Hyruleans flock to the village once Castletown falls. From the gentle spinning of Kakariko's iconic windmill to the lazy, soothing theme music, Ocarina of Time makes a point of painting this place as one of comfort and safety. Yet, Kakariko Village is built on a lie. Deep below the ground, right beneath the feet of unknowing villagers, lurks a labyrinthian torture chamber. The Shadow Temple, and by extension the bottom of the well, is where lies Hyrule's bloody history of greed and hatred. Stone tunnels wind downwards into the earth, ancient halls filled with cages, guillotines, and, of course, the undead. But of all the terrors found beneath Kakariko, one stands out above the rest. During Child Link's exploration into the tunnels beneath the well, he finds himself locked in a small, square chamber, with walls and floor formed from packed earth. Only it's not earth, it's corpses. Hundreds of corpses. Worse still, out of this sea of rotted bodies rise multiple long, slender arms, slowly writhing in the dark. And if Link gets too close, an arm will grab him, pinning him in place as it rises from the ground. Dead Hand, an impossible, sickening, yet unsettlingly human entity, shuffles slowly towards the trapped hero, its pallid flesh stained in streaks of blood, its jaw hanging as if unhinged. If he fails to escape the arm's grasp in time, these jaws will close around Link in a vicious bite as the creature attempts to consume him. Understandably, Dead Hand has become one of the Zelda series' most memorable enemies, not just for the sheer horror of it, but also the mystery. Despite its apparent importance, the beast below the well is never explained. So let's examine everything we know about Dead Hand, and attempt to understand what it is. The first and most important thing to note about Dead Hand is that it isn't a unique monster. Link fights two of them throughout his adventure, first as a child in the bottom of the well, and second as an adult in the Shadow Temple. As I mentioned, these two places are functionally two halves of the same dungeon. Both are bloody, nightmarish places linked to the Sheikah tribe found below Kakariko Village, but it seems less likely that Link is fighting the same monster twice instead of just fighting two of them. Both Dead Hands appear in identical rooms, with the walls, floor and ceiling formed from what appears to be human remains. The texture differs between the original and the 3DS remake. The original appears to be made exclusively out of skulls, but the idea remains the same. Dead Hands appear from among the remains of the deceased. And of course, there are few places in any iteration of Hyrule more closely connected to the dead than the chambers below Kakariko Village. Sheik refers to this place as the House of the Dead, and according to Hyrule Encyclopedia, the Shadow Temple was originally used by the Sheikah to interrogate the enemies of the royal family. There's also the much less reliable source of the Great Hyrule Encyclopedia, originally hosted on Zelda.com. This page included a ton of information on Ocarina of Time, though it was often full of errors and contradictions. Regardless, its entry on the Shadow Temple is still worth mentioning here. Lying behind the Kakariko graveyard, the Shadow Temple was built with the blood and bones of Hyrule's evil dead. The Shadow Temple is a tangle of illusions and puzzles, each designed to add another resident to its already overflowing crypts. This dark purpose is never explicitly stated in-game, however. All we know is that it was built or used by the Sheikah tribe, evidenced by its proximity to their hometown and the emblem of their tribe on its door, that it was in some way connected to the Hyrulean royal family, evidenced by the use of Zelda's lullaby throughout, and that whatever happened here was really, really dark. The history of the bottom of the well and the Shadow Temple aren't made clear through dialogue or story beats, but by the blood-stained stone floors, torture crosses, scythes, spikes, chains, cages, and masses of bones. The walls of Dead Hand's chambers, the same texture used on some other walls throughout the Shadow Temple, gives the impression that this place is, in a literal fashion, made out of the dead. Thousands of corpses packed into the surrounding earth. With this in mind, the tight, enclosed spaces where Link encounters the Dead Hands could be charnel pits or mass graves, where the corpses of those unfortunate enough to meet their end in these dungeons were stored. Like the Shadow Temple and Bottom of the Well themselves, Dead Hand is left unexplained in Ocarina of Time. Much of its horror and its lasting impact on players comes from their own imagination. We're left wondering exactly what we encountered in these depths. The horrors of Dead Hand aren't just limited to its location or its design though, there's the fight itself. At the start of the encounter, Dead Hand lurks beneath the ground, with only its hands writhing above the surface. This means, to fight it, Link must allow himself to be grabbed. The player must lose control, to become trapped as the creature slithers towards them. This isn't strictly true. The second Dead Hand can be fought using the Lens of Truth and bombs, but it is of the first encounter. To force it to emerge from the ground, Link needs to be grabbed by one of its hands. In many ways, this highlights how Dead Hand is the perfect embodiment of the themes of the dungeons below Kakariko. Places which force the hero to face his fears, to delve into the darkness and emerge victorious. To defeat Dead Hand, Link must fall into its trap. With the context of where Dead Hands are found, certain aspects of its design begin to make more sense. The hands with which it reaches up to snare prey all share the same pale and emaciated, corpse-like appearance of their master. At first, it isn't apparent whether the hands and the monster are the same entity, or whether what we're seeing here is the reanimated hands of the dead and a monster which has developed a symbiotic relationship with them, feeding on the prey they ensnare. After all, similar corpse-like hands can be seen reaching out of the pools at the very bottom of the well, and no monster appears alongside them. However, Navi implies that the hands and the monster are one and the same, warning Link to watch out for its infinite hands. Monsters with many arms aren't exactly uncommon in the Zelda series. However, what makes Dead Hand as interesting as it is terrifying is the fact that its face is eerily human. Its jaw is oversized, its neck stretched, but Dead Hand's nose, brow, and sunken eye pits closely resemble a human skull, to the point where the implication seems to be that it was once human. One possible answer for this nightmarish creature could be that it is something of an amalgamation of multiple corpses, a kind of Frankenstein's monster, or Rat King, that was formed out of the countless bodies in which it is found, a being that wishes only to consume more, to add to its horrific mass. This would explain why it has infinite hands reaching up from the masses of skulls, as it would mean that Dead Hand is not a single single organism, but the result of so many bodies in such a small place, tucked into the corners of some of the most haunted places in the Zelda series. In fact, this zombie-like theme is echoed in its name in the German translation of the game, which translates to brain sucker, and would explain its blood-stained, corpse-like flesh. Another possibility is that Dead Hand is something akin to a Preta, or hungry ghost, a spirit popular in Eastern stories. Pretas are often depicted as having long, thin necks and bulging stomachs, which represent their central trait, an eternal, insatiable hunger. They are usually the unfortunate reincarnations of greedy people, whose karma now inflicts them with a hunger they cannot escape. In the case of Dead Hand, its hunger seems to be for flesh, whether that's the heaps of corpses it lives amongst, or the unsuspecting adventurers it attempts to eat. These chambers would not represent the mass graves of the Shadow Temple's victims, but the hoarding grounds of a starving spirit. Of all places in Hyrule, the Shadow Temple, where lies Hyrule's bloody history of greed and hatred, would befit these sad entities. Perhaps the Dead Hands represent these souls, greedy, hateful beings, who now suffer in purgatory as repentance for their sins. In truth, there's no reason that both of these possibilities can't be true. The Zelda games often draw from Japanese culture and mythology for the design of their places, characters, and enemies, while adding their own elements to these established ideas. Dead Hand might be inspired by the hungry ghosts of Buddhism, or be some twisted blend of the tortured dead, or both. Like many things in the Zelda series, the ambiguity is the point. The only thing we know for certain is the sheer horror it evokes, and the courage it takes to fight. A perfect example of the themes of the Shadow Temple. Thanks for watching this video. If you liked it, leave a like, and subscribe if you haven't already for more Zelda content. Cheers guys, and I'll see you next time.